in the intrepid audacity of my youth to make excuses to anyone who walks the earth, especially the people of Butte. That was one of my first editorials when I was 19 years old, after my book was published. I also wrote, if I had been born a man, I would have made a deep impression on the world. To the common ear, those statements sounded odd. They're not. I knew I was a woman, born into the Victorian era and raised on the cult of domesticity and womanhood, a cult which defined a woman's place in a man's world. Why wouldn't a woman who felt her independence and individuality was precious not want to be born to a privileged class? You could say I came out kicking. My brush with fame leaving me with numerous labels: direct, fiery, unflinching, individualistic, egotism, extremist. Go ahead, throw a javelin at me. What boots it? I was born in 1881 to a Scottish family in Canada. My father worked for the Commonwealth. My mother was 28 years his junior, a quiet Presbyterian woman who knew her place. At the age of 4, we moved to Red Wing, Minnesota. And 4 years later, my father passed away. My mother, suddenly left alone with 4 children and a $500,000 inheritance, married the lawyer who was executor of the will. H. Geisberg Kleins moved us to Great Falls, Montana, and eventually to Butte. I attended high school in Butte. I was editor of the newspaper. And the day after my graduation, my sister Dorothy and I packed our bags. We expected to go to Stanford University that morning. Oh, the sun was bright over Butte that day. We went down to breakfast, and my stepfather informed us that there was no money to pay for our college education. His series of entrepreneurial endeavors and mining ventures had left us near penniless. I was furious, so furious. I hated everyone and everything for months. That's how I started writing my daily diary of life in Butte. Its course became a study in my own being, and eventually it was done just for my own amusement. Can I be that thing which I am? Can I be possessed of a peculiar, rare genius and yet be dragged my life out in this uncouth Montana town? Fame began to dictate a weaving course in my life in April of 1902 when Herbert F. Stone of Chicago published my first book. I had titled it, I Await the Coming of the Devil, and he changed it to The Story of Mary McLean by herself. My book sold 100,000 copies within 1 month. The New York Evening Journal secured the rights to publish it as an installment, proclaiming that it was the Confessions of a Young Girl, because I had been 19 when I wrote it. The Butte Miner, a month later, published an article insinuating that a clever man had written the first chapter by cloaking his identity in my name. I was not, it cited, an American girl, because I did not have thoughts of the American girl they knew. The Butte Miner interviewed some of the local people, mostly pastors. Reverend John Hoskins, who interestingly passed on reading it, stated that if all the published extracts were true, then I had perverted my talent, making it low and coarse. Reverend Gibble, who interestingly had not had time to read the book, stated that if all the published extracts were true and not made to condemn the work, that I had perverted my talent and had an immature mind. He also stated that no girl with the true instincts of womanhood could have honestly given expression to the sentiments that were in my book. He also stated that he was sure that I had done it for remuneration and only remuneration. My book brought me $28,000. And within a few years, it was translated into 36 languages. I was lauded by such esteemed writers as Ernest Hemingway, Hart Crane, and Gertrude Stein. All of them citing my importance in the quest for the American novel. I became oddly notorious. It was a strange experience because I had had so few friends in my life. I moved to New York and Boston, lived in folly, frivolity, and falseness. My odd notoriety brought me numerous letters, experiences, and adventures. I met famous persons, artists, actors, writers. I watched as my book of youth was burlesqued with artistic piquancy in the Weber and Fields show of its season. It brought me freedom, and it brought human things into my life, which changed it forever. But it gave me no inner or outer elation or excitement. I stayed in sun-flooded Florida resorts filled with gaudiness and gambling and surprising winter resort people. Those were mongrel, wastrel years of little meaning, little purpose. I returned in psychic fragments on a winter's day in a mood of indifference to Butte. I had been gone 8 years. I was immediately commissioned by the Butte Miner Sunday evening edition to write, when suddenly a scarlet serpent wrapped itself around me, consuming and annihilating me. I had never been sick a day in my life. I had contracted scarlet fever. It took weeks to recover. Long, long weeks of no reasonable thought, no morning, no night, no day. I rose 7 weeks later, the scarlet demon changing my life forever, the energies, the outlooks, the meaning. I had always visioned myself as having an ordinary writing career. And there were numerous people who had that vision for me. It has a vapid taste just to recall it. My flawed life to felicitate upon, that I had spent it in fat lumps of writing, magazine tales, and sex novels. My writing to me is a precious thing, a rare bird, a Babylonian jade. It extracts gold in return for itself. And although it is my talent, it is not my living. I would rather make linen roses in a factory along with pale women than by my writing. But I did write. While I was touring the East Coast, I had written My Friend Annabelle Lee, which was noted as a failure and only garnered me $4,000. I wrote another novel and tore it up. And I wrote for the paper. An article I did for the Butte Miner was made into a movie, a silent film. The Men Who Made Love to Me was banned in Butte, as my book had been banned from the public library. But I broke the fourth wall in film as actress and writer. Then I realized that something had changed in my life. My age had changed me, my experiences, and I was finally able to enjoy Butte as a fascinating and picturesque place. I did not want to leave it. I wasn't hating it and wanting to get on with my life. I was savoring it. And that's when I began my last book, I, Mary McLean. It was a book of my heart, my sentiment, my soul, my body, my magic mind, its contradictions and possibilities. And while in the process of writing it, I discovered that I had begun to cloak my true self as if under 100 black veils, beginning at the age of 2. By 10 years old, I was playing marbles for keeps and smoking bits of rattan buggy whip in the hay-scented barn. I sawed and hammered ruinously with grown-up tools, whistling merrily. And I played with dolls, absorbedly, for hours on hour. I was not boyish nor girlish. I was not childish, except for a oddly hungry child self. I was myself so long and longer, conscious of owning an eerie quality that had toppled over my humanness. And I own it still. Each human one has a self, which in its sweet vein, some way, frightfully being, not in depths, not in surfaces, but just beneath the skin, is the self we keep for oneself alone. I recall call the 18-year-old girl in Butte outwardly savage, and her white-hot aliveness and grace. She fed her spirit on exquisite and wonderful dreams, alternated with passionate woe, analyzed and torn up, and all of it beneath a very quiet exterior. She was outwardly very virginal and inwardly, insolently half-virgin. She was scornfully courageous. But some of what she saw and wrote about was what was going on in Butte when she was angry and wanted to leave. But she documented it. Some of my best work was done in Greenwich Village when I would write street missives that went to the paper. And that's why this piece is my favorite. It's July 1901, and it's Miners' Union Day, and all of Butte has come out to celebrate. The heterogeneous herd turns out, and I turn out with the herd and of it, and meditate and look on. There are Irishmen, Kellys, Caseys, Callahans, staggering under their much whiskey, shouting out their Green Isle maxims. There is the festive Cornishman, ogling and leering and greeting his fellow countrymen with alcoholic heartiness, and gazing after every feminine creature with lustful eyes. There are Irish women swearing genially at each other in shrill pleasantry, and 5 or 6 loudly vociferous children for each. There are round-faced Cornish women likewise, with their train of children. There are suave, sleek sporting men just out of the bathtub, insignificant lawyers, dentists, messenger boys, plungers without number, greasy Italians from Meaderville, and greasier French from the Boulevard edition. Each ancient miners, each of whom believed he was the first claim in Butte. Starved-looking Chinamen here and there, a contingent of Finns, Swedes and Germans, musty, stuffy old Jew pawnbrokers who crawled out of their holes for a brief recreation, dirt-encrusted Indians and squaws in dirty gay blankets from their flea-haunted camp below the town, box rustlers who were as common in Butte as barmaids in Ireland, swell, flashy-looking Africans, respectable women with white aprons around their waists and little sailor hats on their heads, who had left their children at home to see what was happening. Innumerable stray youngsters from the dark haunts of Dublin Gulch, heavy restaurant keepers with toothpicks in their mouth, a vast army of dry goods clerks, the papered clerk gentry, miners of every description, representatives from Dogtown, Chicken Flats, seldom seen suburbs of Butte. Pale, thin individuals who sing and dance in beer halls, in smart society people in high traps and tally-hos, impossible women, so-called, but in Butte, hardly. In vast hats and extremely plaid stockings. Persons who take things seriously and play the races for a living. Beer jerkers, biscuit shooters, soft-voiced Mexicans and Arabians. The dregs, the elite, the humbly respectful, the off-scouring, all thrown together and mixed up. is sordid, beastly, and time-serving, but withal romantic, poetic, and the wideness of the West. My novels were not portraits of me. They were portraits of a room I had quit. My hat is on the trunk. My gloves are on my desk. My whiskey's on my desk. My breath is in the air. My grief is on the walls, clinging like smoke. My flat despair is on the petunia leaves in the window. But I'm not here. I have quit the room. Writing, to me, is words shaping a descriptive moment, or time, or feeling. It's what I share. I was at the back door this afternoon for a long time, speaking with an elderly Italian beggar woman. And as she walked away from me, a thought came to me with sudden force. The earth is only the earth, but here and there, it is brilliantly touched by divine fingers. Especially want to thank Nora, because numerous years ago, she was the first one who ever saw the script to this, and she did give me some pointers which led me in different directions, and I want to thank you for that. This is kind of like a living history thing, and it's interesting. It's an interesting experience to sort of take on the persona of someone through their writing, and that most of that was her writing. I would slip a few things in there once in a while to sort of connect them, but her writing, there's quite a bit of it actually, is still out there on the internet, on YouTube. I think the story of Mary MacLane by herself is 5 hours of audio. I got Mary MacLane off the internet for free. It's in a special library where you can download the book, and it's easy, to read. So if any of you are interested in pursuing any more reading of Mary MacLane, I really do believe that she had an important influence on women writers in America. The next woman to come along with diaries was Anais Nin, and I'm sure there were a few others, but you have to realize at what period of time she lived and how she was a feminist and how she was taken by society. She died at 48 years old in 1929 in Chicago in a hotel. She was being taken care of by an elderly black woman, and it was different accounts alleged that she had killed herself, but her family stated that she had ovarian or stomach cancer. But I want to thank all of you for coming and sharing Mary MacLane with me.
So this might be the first time you guys have been here. Here at stage 9 in the belly of the Chrystal Phoenix store. Rising from the ashes, if you recall. We had a fire a year and a half ago. And so we're really honored to have you as guests here, and we hope that it'll become a pattern. We intend to have a metaphysical store and art and jewelry and stones, and John has his music and his supplies and strings, and of course our stage, which we will want to host comedy and theater and music and workshops of creative things. If somebody came up with something, we'd probably go for it. So, just want to welcome you, and you know, I'm Kelly, and this is my husband John, and this is our home and business, and I want to have Susan draw the winner of just a friendly little gift from my store, a piece of jasper. Robert Dubrovnik.
How often do you get gifts when you go to the theater? Every time.
This is Oprah. Very nice.
So I put Mary McLean in the basket at the very end. It was 10 after 2. And I thought, you know, well, yesterday I put Susan's name in. But today I thought, no, I'll put Mary's in. That'll, if she wins, Susan will get a big kick out of that. And right when I dropped her name in the basket, the front door went. And I got goosebumps on my back, and I'm like, all right, we're going. Thanks, Susan, for bringing her here to this.